Chapter 1. Prologue. Skylar, we are all going to die. Give back the dragon's jewels, you bastard. A loud, desperate voice shouted as the owner of the voice dodged a massive claw by a hair's breadth that was attempting to tear his body apart. Shit. He rolled over, dirt filling his mouth and coating his hoodie and sweatpants. He had even lost one of his sneakers. And to think he was the transmigrator summoned from another universe to change the story. A gray screen, visible only to him, flashed in front of his eyes, mocking him. #Keeper of time, I told you not to change what has already happened once too much, but you didn't listen. Just don't die, I have invested a lot in you. A flood of curses surged through Zach's mind as he read the message. Like every young light running to survive around him, he glared at the youth with ash-brown hair sprinting far ahead of them. They were on the brink of death under the dragon's wrath, all because of that bastard who had wiped its treasury clean. If looks could kill, Skylar would have died 1,000 times already. Another handsome figure opposite Zach shouted at the youth with ash-brown hair. For heaven's sake, stop, Skylar. This young man exuded a saintly aura, just like those who wants to save the world, as he rescued another from the dragon's fiery breath, sustaining injuries in the process. Max grabbed his injured arm and ran with the person he just saved. His eyes flashed with relief when Skylar glanced back, but the latter's next words nearly made him want to spit out blood. Nope. I found the jewels, so they are mine. Why should I give them back? Hearing this, Zach felt like shedding tears of blood. He wanted to shout at Max, you are the damn protagonist of this story. You can't even catch a weak light elementist. Who the hell made you the protagonist? But he could only swallow his grievance. After all, it was 99.99% his fault that the protagonist was no longer the protagonist and his place had been snatched. Who the hell said side characters who were meant to die would be good companions and risk their lives for you if you saved them and changed their fate? Suddenly, the massive blue dragon, with scales that glistened like sapphires in the sunlight and wings stretching wide enough to cast a shadow over everything in its path, let out a thundering, furious roar, sending chills down everyone's spine. Its long, elegant horns and sharp fangs glimmered as it swung its lengthy tail to obliterate the towering coniferous trees and structures surrounding it, searching for the rat who had stolen its treasures. However, it was destined to be disappointed until the end because the rat had already escaped, leaving behind the people who were cursing the said rat incessantly. Hiding inside a small structure made of multiple rocks stacked upon one another in the distance, Skylar peeked out with a pair of innocent blue eyes, gently caressing the numerous rings on his fingers. What a bountiful day it is. To understand how the weak, light elementist, who was declared a waste and destined to live an ordinary human life, is now tormenting the two big shots, we need to go back a few years in time. No, do not think he is the bad guy. He has suffered a lot, just like all those people with tragic backstories in the novels. His own blood sister, who is currently fighting alongside that Max guy, left him to die. And let us not even mention that Zach guy, who changed his fate and wanted to use him, only to ditch him when he found out he was useless and had no future. The fear we don't face becomes our limits. By Skylar Ironheart. Chapter 2. The worst typical beginning hee. The gems are mine. An eerie laughter echoed in a medium-sized modern, dimly lit room as a 16-year-old boy with prominent dark circles under his crystal-like blue eyes tapped non-stop on a gaming console. Skylar's gaze was fixed on the computer screen in front of him, which sparkled with countless colors, as he deliberately accidentally led all his teammates to their demise after they had defeated all the enemies and the last boss monster. Sadly, in the end, only he remained in the game to claim the reward, a massive chest overflowing with gems that were, in truth, of no use to anyone except for their beauty. Instantly, the tiny chat box in the corner of the game interface erupted with accusatory messages as his now dead team members unleashed a barrage of curses. Skylar chuckled and, with a swift tap, activated the built-in microphone in the headphones resting on his ears. Come on, guys, how can you doubt me? All of your deaths were truly accidental. Such an innocent tone, it could deceive anyone into believing he was blameless. Even if he had sold them right in front of their very eyes. Unfortunately, that didn't apply to the players in this particular game, where he was quite famous for his devious nature. Still, they could only grit their teeth in frustration, knowing very well that this jerk had muted their voices long ago. They had invited player Sky to join the team solely because of his exceptional skill, and that's where they made a mistake. They should have listened to the other players who told them that the moment this jerk discovered that the final reward of the game was something sparkling, his entire team would accidentally die, leaving him as the only survivor to claim the treasure. Skylar ignored the chat and watched with glee as his character in the game took the treasure box. But before he could open it, the door to his room was flung open loudly, causing him to jump from his chair. His first instinct was to shut his computer by pulling out the plug, but unfortunately, it was already too late. The she-devil had caught him red-handed this time. He turned around only to find a beautiful woman clad in a nightgown standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and a stern expression. Skylar mourned the loss of his treasure box mentally, which he hadn't been able to open, and feigned a gasp, clutching the top of his blue checkered pajamas. "Mum, you scared me." The woman narrowed her blue eyes, which were similar to Skylar's but lacked the clear crystal-like brilliance. Her hair was a mess, showing that she had just woken up. "Skylar Ironheart, how many times do I have to tell you not to stay up playing games so late at night? Go to sleep now, or we will be late for the testing center tomorrow." Like a disobedient child pretending to be obedient when they heard their mother call their full name, Skylar nodded instantly. Due to the light streaming in from the door, his ash-brown hair shimmered like dark gold. Skylar winced when Rhea Ironheart slammed the door of his room shut, silently lighting a candle for his father inwardly. Hopefully, Old Man Johnson would survive the night. His mother looked extremely pissed. Finally, silence returned to the room filled with sparkling trinkets and walls cluttered with poorly executed hand-drawn sketches of runes, talismans, and inscriptions. Skylar walked toward his bed, positioned opposite the computer table. It was already 11:55 p.m. at night. He was excited, but he could not stay awake the entire night again. Tomorrow, he had a big day ahead. He was finally going to awaken his elemental affinity and potential to become one of the Light's awakened individuals who fought against monstrous creatures, villains, and entered the famous Battle Royal that descended 1,000 years ago to prevent calamities. In Eldoria, one of the safest and most technologically advanced planets in the universe, where diverse races coexist, every inhabitant, human or otherwise, awakens their natural elemental affinity and potential upon reaching the age of 16. These elemental affinities are categorized into 8 main elements so far: fire, water, earth, wind, lightning, space, light, and darkness or shadow. Each of these primary elements encompasses its own sub-elements. One can awaken affinity with multiple elements. People with 2 elements are called dual elementists, those with 3 are tri-elementists, and those with 4 are quadruple elementists, and so on. However, having more than 5 affinities is extremely rare and has not been seen so far. Lastly, the potential growth one can reach with all the elements they have awakened is evaluated using a 25-star rating system divided into 5 tiers. Novice 1 5 stars, Adept 6 10 stars, Epic 11 1 5 stars, Legendary 16 20 stars, and Mythic 21 25 stars. Each star within these 5 tiers is further divided into 3 stages: initial, middle, and final. Skylar, as the son of a man who is a 8-star dual elementist with a 15-star potential and a woman who is a 7-star tri-elementist with a staggering 18-star potential, has high hopes for his upcoming affinity test. He has inherited his mom's beauty and his dad's intelligence. Moreover, his older sister awakened as a dual elementist 2 years ago with a 20-star potential. So, who can blame him for being optimistic? That's why his heart shattered completely the next morning when he went to the Seoul Public Testing Center in Naon City with his parents, only to awaken with a single affinity for the light element and a mere 1-star potential in front of countless people. Many people at the center recorded videos of the scene, chuckling and murmuring words of pity about his misfortune. Skylar told himself inwardly that it was okay, again and again, to prevent himself from crying and breaking down in front of his parents and so many others. It was uncommon, but he had heard many stories on the news about individuals who discovered ways to enhance their potential. He wouldn't admit defeat and would find a way to elevate his own potential. However, the optimistic and childish youth within him finally died when he saw the look of disappointment and embarrassment on his own older sister's face. He couldn't even stop her as she turned and left. Jenny Ironheart had returned to Nowan City for the first time in 2 years since being recruited by the Starlight Academy, the #1 academy on the human continent that trains lights, as all those with a potential of 15 stars and above are teleported to participate in the Battle Royal, whether they wished or not, at the age of 20. She even brought all her friends along. But who would have thought that Skylar would make her lose face in front of them? Chapter 3. The Worst Typical Beginning. 2. After a few hours that felt like the longest hours of his life, Skylar sat in the backseat of a sleek white car his father was driving, heading home with his parents. He wore a navy blue suit that his mother had selected for his special day that morning, but today had become the worst day of his life. His family was relatively well off, but they still lacked the means to afford advanced technology like flying cars, ships, and other famous high-tech vehicles that could float and travel at the speed of light. Skylar gazed out the car window. Besides some high-tech flying vehicles, there were numerous crystals of various sizes floating amidst the clouds above Nowan City, just like throughout the entire universe. These beautiful crystals served as gateways to other dimensions and realms, filled with a variety of monsters, beasts, and spirits, alongside many treasures. The difficulty or strength of these dimensions and realms is also divided into 5 tiers: novice, adept, epic, legendary, and mythic. The larger the crystal size, the stronger the monsters within and the higher its tier. Right now, all the crystals above Nowan City are white, meaning they are stable. If their color turns gray, it indicates a high but manageable number of monsters inside. White and gray crystals are open to everyone according to the rules set by the royalty in the human continent. Lights who have awakened are allowed to use them freely as long as their strength is greater than that of the crystal they are entering. However, if a crystal turns orange, it indicates that the realm inside requires urgent clearing to prevent a breach. If the orange crystal isn't cleared in time and turns red, it will shatter, releasing all the monsters inside into the surroundings to wreak havoc. Therefore, only official lights affiliated with guilds and graduates of the academies are permitted to enter and clear orange crystals to handle the situation. These crystals began materializing a few years after the Battle Royale appeared. No one has yet found the reason, but a crystal can materialize out of thin air anytime and anywhere. That's why citizens are required to undergo basic training to hide and fight in such situations at the age of 10. It was true that the inhabitants of the universe could harness the power of natural elements from the beginning, and that monsters and spirits existed within it, but that was an era of peace. The day the Battle Royal appeared, peace shattered, prompting everyone to desperately seek ways to become stronger. Skylar's fingers itched to touch the crystals, but he looked away. He had always been a fan of sparkling things. It was a desperate urge to hoard them all and never share. But now he wondered if he could ever reach them in this life, let alone touch them. The image of his sister's disappointed and embarrassed face flashed in his mind, and he let out a self-deprecating smile. He took a deep breath and fiddled with his fingers to alleviate the pain in his heart. Silence enveloped the car. Rhea Ironheart anxiously glanced at her son in the rearview mirror. She couldn't take it anymore, and to end the silence, she pinched her husband. Johnson Ironheart winced but shut his mouth when he noticed her red-rimmed eyes. He was a handsome man in his mid-40s. However, just like his beautiful wife, who was the same age as him, he appeared as though he were in his early 30s. This was because everyone's lifespan extends. With each star and strength they ascend in their awakened elements. A typical 1-star elementalist in Eldoria can live a few years longer than the average human lifespan, which is 70 to 90 years. Johnson was also one of the 2 guild leaders of the Only Lights Guild in Nowan City, renowned institutions that eliminate monsters from other dimensions. They can also enter the famous Battle Royal, but after the preliminary challenge. where everyone with a potential of 15 stars or higher is forcefully called at the age of 20, it is up to the lights to challenge the advanced levels of the battle royal. He ran his calloused fingers through his dark hair and glanced at his son from the corners of his deep gray eyes. The couple had expected Skylar to complain and cry when he faced such a big setback. But their son hadn't said anything, nothing at all. "Boy, are you okay?" His voice finally broke the silence, and his wife held her breath when she saw Skylar lift his crystal blue eyes. Her heart sank. When he smiled sweetly, "I am fine, don't worry," he murmured, but his parents' eyes widened when they didn't sense even a single fluctuation in his voice. They had been by his side for all 16 years of his life and had seen him cry and laugh. When did their child learn to mask his emotions? Johnson sighed and prevented his wife from crying in front of their son to avoid making matters worse. They needed to handle this carefully. He parked the car in the parking area outside one of the tall buildings along the straight road where they lived in one of the apartments and stopped Skylar with his hand from getting out of the vehicle. He looked back and reached out to ruffle Skylar's ash-brown hair. His voice was soft but carried a hint of sternness. "Sky, we know it's tough. But Rhea and One know that our kids aren't weak. So, don't you dare take this setback to heart." Skylar nodded, and he went on. "You know there are plenty of other paths. You can choose. You're very talented, and it's clear from all the A's you have gotten in school just by flipping through your books." He chuckled at the end, and the atmosphere in the car lightened because both he and his wife knew that their son had never focused on his studies yet still managed to achieve the highest scores in class throughout his school life. This was the reason why Skylar's teachers always found themselves tongue-tied and couldn't complain about him playing games and dozing off in class, even if they wanted to. During parent-teacher meetings, "We know that you won't be able to get into any academy that trains lights now. But my son, with your intelligence, you can easily gain admission to a good college." Rhea agreed with her husband and reached out to hold Skylar's hand while her husband continued speaking in a calm voice. "How about you explore technology? Become an alchemist, or pursue a career as a scholar. These are just some of the jobs you can get. Plus, you could even become a famous game streamer online. Haven't you always loved games?" Rhea picked up when he stopped as she tapped Skylar's hand with a warm smile. "Your father and I are always here for you. And will support you. It doesn't matter if you can't become a strong light. But..." She paused for a moment, swallowing hard, while gazing at Johnson with an expression that held secrets they had kept hidden. "If you truly want to become a light, then we can acquire treasures that will help enhance your..." Skylar immediately interrupted her. "No, Mum, I am really fine. If I really have a future where I can become a powerful light, I will on my own. But if I can't, then I need to learn to adjust and face the truth." Both Rhea and Johnson were surprised to see the resolve on his face. They could tell their son had grown up, but they didn't like how it had happened so suddenly. Still, they hoped he would be okay with time. But they soon realized how wrong they were when he stopped playing games, the one hobby he had once been unable to live without. The worst typical beginning. Skylar stepped into his room, and the door closed behind him with a click. He pressed the light switch, illuminating the space, and his eyes roamed over the familiar room. He took off his suit jacket, revealing a white shirt underneath, and laid it on the bed. Reaching into his pants pocket, he pulled out his smartphone, which he had silenced earlier. As he unlocked it, he noticed a flood of messages from friends, old classmates, and even those he had conflicts with. "Hey, Skylar, it's Zen. I heard you awakened a 1-star potential. Are you okay? I've never heard of anyone awakening such a low potential. It's Riz, the classmate you fought last year. I heard what happened at the testing center. Haha, serves you right, Skylar. Hurry, check StarNet. Someone uploaded a video of what happened at the testing center online on many platforms. Now everyone is talking about you. Bro, are you okay? I heard what happened, and I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Remember how I embarrassed myself in front of the class just because I interrupted your stupid game? Today, I finally got my revenge. Haha, that was harsh. By the way, I awakened as a tri-elementalist with 12-star potential. Skylar, I was in the testing center and saw what happened, but my mom just told me not to talk to you anymore. Just saw the video. There were many more messages. But he couldn't read any further and roughly threw his phone onto the bed. It bounced before falling onto the tiled floor with a sound that indicated the screen had cracked. Stepping back, he collapsed onto the cold floor and stared blankly at the white ceiling before covering his eyes. He didn't like what had happened, but he wouldn't cry. The whole city's laughing at me. It stings. Skylar clenched his fists. No one was present to notice, but beneath his arm, one of his eyes glowed a deep dark hue while the other radiated a brilliant white, only for the two colors to vanish into the bright, crystal-like blue of his gaze. Still, there's no way I am going to admit defeat before I even start my journey. He cleared his mind, and his emotions finally began to settle, or perhaps he was simply burying them deep within himself to maintain the aloof facade. Maybe he had truly grown up in a very short time. Raising his slim, pale fingers, he began to try to sense the elemental energy known as Evil surrounding him. It was an intangible force, flowing throughout the universe, one could only perceive and harness. Once they had awakened their affinity, as the vital essence of nature, Evil was crucial for harnessing elemental power. He had heard that Evil has 8 different colors, each corresponding to one of the 8 elements that people could control. Red Evil represents fire element. Blue denotes water, brown is for earth, light green corresponds to wind, white is for lightning, gray color represents space, golden represents light, and dark color symbolizes darkness. A person can resonate with the color of Evil that aligns with their awakened affinity and absorb it into their body, but they can't resonate with other colors. No one can forcefully absorb Evil, with which they lack affinity. Their bodies simply can't accommodate it. Evil is also utilized to fuel and craft powerful artifacts, strengthen one's body, and many other powerful things. Skylar had learned in school that once someone awakens their affinity, they can finally sense Evil. But it's not easy. It can take months or even years for someone to sense the Evil that resonates with their affinity. It's even more difficult if one's potential is low, because it is common knowledge that the lower their potential, the harder it is for them to grow stronger, as their capacity for growth is very limited. He had awakened affinity with light element. Therefore, he could resonate with the golden Evil, but considering his 1-star potential, he knew he had 0 chance of sensing it, let alone guide it into his body. It would be nothing short of a miracle if he even sensed it in 5 years. Regardless, he closed his eyes and just decided to try his best. If he couldn't sense it, then that would be it. Therefore, no one could imagine his shock when, after only half an hour of silent concentration, he sensed faint golden particles around his raised fingers with his eyes closed. His eyes snapped open, wide in disbelief. His first thought was, maybe the awakening orb in the testing center made a mistake, and his potential wasn't so low. But they had checked his potential more than 5 times because of his parents. So how could that be possible? He took a deep breath to calm himself and glanced at his fingers, but he couldn't see or sense anything with his open eyes. I need to be certain. I shouldn't get my hopes up without any proof. Right, or else it will hurt even more. Skylar knew that after sensing Evil, everyone had to guide it into their body and find a suitable pathway for it to form a tiny crystal at the center of their heart. The moment that crystal is formed, one could officially wield their elemental power and achieve the status of a 1-star noviceal. Individuals who awaken affinity with more than one element need to create a separate crystal for each element. It is up to them to decide which element to prioritize. After all, even though the potential for all awakened elements is the same, it relies on a person's ability to Strengthen them equally. Having awakened affinity for just one element, Skylar didn't have to think about the rest. He just wanted to be sure one last time that he truly had no future as a light. So, he decided to guide the Evil he had sensed in his body to form a crystal. While sensing Evil's presence is difficult, guiding it into the body is straightforward, as it just requires allowing it to flow in. However, forming a crystal is a very delicate process that requires supervision, but he was too nervous to think about anything else. Quickly, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, feeling the tiny golden particles around him. He sat there for many hours, but he failed. He tried multiple times, but the results were always the same. The Evil around him didn't even budge, let alone enter his body under his guidance. All of this stemmed from his low potential. Haha, what did I even expect? This was the second time in a day that he felt so miserable and suffocated. He shouldn't have held any hope from the start, but he just couldn't help it. His eyes turned red, and he really wanted to cry, but he held back and scolded himself. Nope, no, how dare I think that the awakening orb made a mistake. It was at that moment that Rhea Ironheart, who always barged into his room without permission, knocked softly at the door. She didn't open the door but said softly, "Sky, dinner is ready. Come out and eat with your dad and me. We don't want you to get sick. You even skipped lunch." Skylar held his breath and replied in a measured tone, "Mum, I will be out for dinner, just give me a minute to wash my hands." She left, and he lightly slapped his cheeks before taking a minute to wash his hands and straighten his clothes, wanting to look presentable so as not to worry his parents. The worst typical beginning IV. Skylar walked out of his room. The square dining table in the three-room apartment was positioned directly in front of the high kitchen counter, facing the spacious living room, which featured a set of sofas and a large LED TV on the opposite side. He dragged one of the 5 empty chairs around the table and sat down. His father was already seated at the head of the table with a cup of coffee, browsing through his phone to check guild matters. Since the food and cutlery were already arranged on the table, Rhea sat down opposite him. Skylar was somewhat surprised when he saw that his mother had made his favorite spicy chicken wraps. He reached out for them directly, without even glancing at the egg sandwiches or the salad of mixed greens, tomatoes, and cucumbers. Rhea rolled her eyes. She wanted to reprimand him, knowing he wouldn't eat anything else, especially vegetables, but she let him off the hook for today. The moment they were done eating, his father pulled out a small gift box from his shirt pocket. He and his wife had prepared it as a gift for their son's special day but hadn't been able to present it to him. Before Johnson could hand it to him, his son decided to drop a bombshell. "I sensed Evil." Johnson choked on his breath, and Rhea, who was pouring orange juice from a jug into her glass, overfilled it. He coughed a few times as Rhea stood up to pat his back while questioning her son. "What?" "I said I sensed Evil." "All right, they didn't hear wrong." But the dilemma was how. Even Jenny Ironheart, their daughter and Skylar older sister who had awakened a 20-star potential for her elements, took a full week to sense it. Johnson calmed down and looked at his son with a serious expression. It sounded unbelievable, but they knew Skylar wouldn't lie about such a big thing. "I hope you didn't try to form a crystal without our presence. You know it's a very dangerous process." Skylar blinked and glanced at the box his father had taken out of his pocket. "I didn't. I can just sense the golden Evil, not guide it into my body." Johnson narrowed his eyes sharply. He knew his son too well to believe he wasn't lying. The boy had definitely tried to form a crystal alone. Now, he wasn't sure whether to feel grateful or not that his son hadn't been able to guide Evil into his body. He pushed the box toward Skylar. With furrowed brows and stern eyes. "This is for you. And don't do anything reckless again. If you are able to guide Evil into your body, tell me. I will supervise and help you form a crystal." Skylar nodded, took the box, and left. For his room. Only when he entered his room did his mother speak in a hurried tone. Honey, I am sure there is something special about Skylar that we aren't able to see. Treasures that enhance one's potential are rare to find, but we can search for them to help him. If we can't find them, then she bit her lower lip as if she were making the biggest decision of her life. How about we ask for my mother's help? I know it's selfish of me after I left her side, but should we contact the Queen? We can send Skylar to the royal castle. She may hate me, but she will help her grandson. Johnson sighed and pulled his wife to sit down. He wanted to agree, but they had assessed Skylar's potential multiple times at the public testing center. The awakening orb couldn't make mistakes so many times. He had even secretly used an old artifact, but the results were the same. Just as his wife mentioned, Rhea was one of the 5 children of the reigning queen of the human continent. While there was a government in place, it functioned under the monarchy that had ruled the human lands for centuries. Several hundred years ago, all lower noble statuses were abolished, leaving only 3 loyal duke families and marquis families. These families are now the richest in the entire continent, second only to the royal family. The current heads of these families are some of the most powerful lights, and they act as the 6 main leaders of the government, overseeing the continent. All the rules and regulations in the human continent are set by the royal family, and the 6 noble families implement them. Rhea had left the royal family to avoid the bloody war that started when the queen asked her 5 children to fight and prove themselves to determine who, after her, would be the next leader of the throne. It was then that she met Johnson in his guild as a young light. They entered many dimensions together to fight monsters and save people, fell in love, and eventually settled down for a normal life. This was the first time she had thought about contacting her mother, knowing that Skylar had always wanted to be one of the best lights, just like her daughter. She would do anything for her kids. Johnson patted her hand. Calm down, dear. You were right, but we can't send Skylar to the royal castle. It's too dangerous with your siblings vying for the throne. The queen would love her grandson, but you know her rules. One must protect themselves. At the same time, Skylar, who had yet to fully close the door to his room, their apartment had soundproof walls. It seemed that was why his parents didn't set up a noise-canceling barrier around them, assuming he had returned to his room. So, all in all, he is the grandson of the current queen of the continent. Really? Damn, why does his life suddenly sound like a plot twist from one of those fiction novels he liked to read? Is he going to start battling dragons and sipping tea at royal parties next? Skylar shuddered involuntarily. With his meager 1-star potential, he should better steer clear of royalty, or he knew he would die young. Considering he had seen online how his grandmother was a vicious and powerful light with no heart. His father continued, but he finally closed his door entirely when he heard Johnson Ironheart's next words. Quote, Also, even if we and your mother managed to acquire rare treasures, it wouldn't enhance Skylar potential by more than a few stars. You know, treasures can only be effective to a certain extent. Skylar dropped down beside his door and hid his face under his right arm. He knew that treasures could only enhance a person's potential to a certain extent. He understood. He just didn't dare to admit it. But it still stung so badly. Well, I already told them not to search for treasures for me, and I won't change my mind. This is my life and my battle. With a deep breath, he finally opened the gift box his parents had given him. His eyes widened when he saw a blue ring engraved with a hammer nestled inside the box. This, how could he not recognize it? This was a storage ring, a famous item everywhere. These rings were created by dwarves from the dwarven continent, a race known for their short stature and craftsmanship. They are crafted using the space element and have a spatial pocket that holds items without adding weight except for living beings. They come in various sizes, with larger spaces being more expensive. He had always wanted one, but since they were much pricier than the spatial pouches available everywhere and only those who could wield Evil could use them, his parents never bought him one. Skylar's face fell again as he remembered that he couldn't use Evil yet. He needed to form a crystal before he could HMS it. I guess I can't use it yet, let alone find out how much space this little ring has. The Battle Royal I. 2 years later, at 4th Noun High, the top college in all of Noun City. A pair of blue eyes, shimmering like the ocean under the sun, fluttered closed tightly as their owner leaned back casually against the white wall that separated him from the group of girls mocking him on the other side. Among the girls stood a silver-haired beauty, radiating an air of arrogance, her once sweet demeanor now broken. I told you I don't like Skylar. He's good-looking, but he has no future. As a light with his one-star potential. We all have low potential, but his is the worst of all. The reason I stick around him is that his face looks like it belongs on a magazine cover. Which girl wouldn't want a handsome top student running errands for her? Everyone around her giggled, thoroughly enjoying themselves, as one of them, a bit shorter in height, leaned in to whisper. But he seems to like you. What if he confesses to you in front of the class? What are you going to do? Ava, the silver-haired beauty, scoffed with pure disdain and toyed with the tips of her hair that cascaded down her shoulders. Tisk, so what? I am going to reject him in front of everyone if he does. Kai from next class likes me and has a much brighter future than he does. Why would I want to waste my life with someone like him? Skylar chuckled. He didn't like this girl, but he was thoroughly amused by this group. 2 years ago, after his affinity test, he worked hard and got into the top college. He still hadn't decided which career he wants to pursue, that's why he selected all courses available for the students. He stopped playing games. Instead, he started exercising in his father's guild gym every day to strengthen his body and learn hand-to-hand combat from the lights. This way, he would at least be strong enough to protect himself in danger, even though he has no future as a light. His parents did not change even after he was declared a waste in front of so many, and his tragic testing day became the top search in all of Noun City. They were able to use their influence in the city to remove the videos people took of him that day, but they couldn't erase them completely. Those videos kept resurfacing on various online platforms, with people laughing in the comments about how someone had awakened a one-star potential, the lowest ever seen on the entire continent. That's why his face is well known throughout the city, even more than the actors. Even the old aunt selling soup and noodles outside the college gate knew about the shit that went down in his life. All his old friends severed ties with him. Many of them passed the exams and got accepted into prestigious academies, while some cut ties because their parents didn't want them associating with someone with no future. Others simply believed he was beneath them to engage with. If someone had asked him 2 years ago, he would have said he was an extrovert with a massive circle of friends. However, now he had no friends and wouldn't talk to anyone unless necessary, a typical example of an extreme introvert. But he knew he wasn't. He just thought it was a waste of time. Upon entering college, he noticed that everyone avoided him like the plague. This explains why he spoke to the silver-haired girl when she offered to be his friend. No, the true reason was her long silver hair. He still liked shiny and beautiful things, especially those that sparkled. Skylar suddenly cleared his throat loudly to get the attention of the girl snickering on the college terrace and revealed himself. Don't misunderstand. I don't like anyone, and from now on, don't talk to me. Immediately, the group of girls shut their mouths, startled to hear his voice. Ava, the girl he supposedly liked, had her face turn ugly upon seeing him. She wanted to salvage the situation, knowing that his family was quite rich and his parents were powerful lights who held significant influence in Noun City. But he left without even glancing at her, making her grit her teeth and shout, "Who wants to talk to a loser?" Anyway, Skylar didn't look back and ignored her completely. He descended the stairs to the lower floor and walked through the corridor lined with classrooms, where students in similar white button-down shirts and blue pants uniforms as his were walking. The students avoided him, but many of them couldn't help but peek at him. That was to be expected. Although Skylar was somewhat shorter than the other boys his age, he was undeniably handsome, with a lean yet well-defined physique. He was already finished with his classes for the day, so he left and took a ride home. As he entered the apartment and sat down to take off his sneakers, he heard the noise coming from the TV. In the background, multiple news anchors were addressing a critical issue affecting the continent. So, even Argon and his large team, the strongest lights on the human continent, have failed to clear the 51st level of Battle Royal. Will another calamity descend if no one can clear that level? Another grim voice echoed. The last calamity descended on Eldoria 90 years ago. It was a massive wave of flying monsters that surged from a crack. They killed many and destroyed a lot of cities. What will happen this time? Her voice was followed by another. Why so pessimistic? The powerful lights from the other continents haven't tried yet. We still have many years ahead. The Battle Royal isn't physically present. Young lights who are forcefully summoned to participate in the preliminary test at the age of 20 and pass the test are the only individuals who can enter it anytime through the link. They are the ones clearing its next levels like every other planet in the universe, and if a level isn't cleared for 30 years, a calamity will descend.